Hey guys, it's Ken and we're here to do another quick tutorial today. It's something called dark food photography. What's dark food photography, you ask? It's not about chocolate cake and Oreo cookies, although it could be, I suppose. But it actually means more about the light, the environment that you create to take your photos. And I'm sure you've probably seen something like this on Instagram already. It takes a little bit of effort and a lot of patience, but if you do it right, you can come up with some really great shots. So I'm here in my house, not in the classroom, but that's okay. It's classroom time.
Classroom time, classroom time. Children, time to start learning. Classroom time, classroom time.
So we're in the kitchen, and I chose the kitchen because it's the biggest window that lets in the most natural light. So basically the idea is really simple. You create like a little tent and you create a little window in that tent, and that's where the light for your shot really comes shining through. The one thing to notice first, natural light. You can also do this with controlled light, but it's a little bit trickier. So as you can see, we've got our camera right here on a tripod, very important. We've got some cookies on a little plate and a few more cookies out here outside the plate. When you're doing shots like this, you also want to have little things. In this case, I use chocolate chips, but something to just break up the monotony of the solid color. So we've got this burgundy placemat that creates a little bit of contrast with our darker earth tones, but then it was a little bit boring. There are great big empty spaces here, great big empty spaces there, and so I just threw these little chocolate chips in there to make sure that everything wasn't kind of boring and bland. I also used these little, I don't even know what they are, but they came in a little jar at Dollarama. We also have this base here too, which I just picked up at Michael's. It was a little bit expensive. It was like $20, but you know, you could use an old pallet or you could use some old wood from the backyard or the shed or the garage or whatever, and you can create all kinds of really interesting backdrops and bases and things like that. I also put in this little empty coffee cup, and I just did that because it was a little bit bare in that back corner, and when I tried to put a colored cup in there, something solid, it overpowered my subject matter, which is my cookies. All of this was bought at Dollarama. The cookies, the chocolate chips, the little widget things, the round, what do you call it? The round thing there. What do you call it? Placemat, the glass, all of that I picked up at Dollarama, probably maybe $5 or $6 all in. So the setup is simple. Put down your base, set up your shot, set up your tent. So this is one board with a little notch in the edge of it so I can bend it nicely. And this is another board, just cut right in half, and that's about an 8-inch gap right there that just allows the light in. I have this piece of paper here because this light from the window was just a little bit too harsh. So I just grabbed some parchment paper, ripped off a piece, leaned it up here between the gap in these two pieces right here, and then that works as a little diffuser. So you can see it's obviously still letting the light through, but it softens it up a little bit. With diffuser, without diffuser. It's a subtle difference, but it is a difference, and it makes a difference in your photo. These foam core boards you can also buy at the dollar store. I bought everything they had. They had like 25 of them. I bought them all for about $1.25 a piece. The only other thing that's a little bit expensive is this backdrop. These are photography bases or backdrops that I have, and they're a little bit expensive too. You get them for about $20 off Amazon. I'm also using one of these guys right here as a reflector card. Now this is just a piece of wood with a piece of computer paper stuck to the front of it, but what it does is it acts like a bounce or a reflector. Light comes in, hits the white spot, and then bounces onto the object and fills in some of those shadows that you might not want. You'll see it a little bit how it works. So now that things are kind of set up, we get our camera in place, and then we just start practicing by taking our photos. When you're setting your camera up, don't forget that you have to use your manual mode. So you need to set your f-stop, your shutter speed, and you need to set your ISO. So my aperture was 5.6, my shutter speed was 1/6 of a second, and ISO was 400. Now this might be different for you and your setup, and that's okay. You just have to sort of use your knowledge of the camera and its functions to find that sweet spot, and you'll get it. And it may take some effort. Like I said, I took 75, 100 photos, something like that, but you'll get there. You just have to work through it. Now don't settle on the first photo. Like I said, I took hundreds of these all morning long as I'm trying to make this setup work best and get the best photos that I possibly can. So change things around, move your cookies around or your subject matter, whatever it might be. Add some little doodads and things that fill in some of that space. Take them out, put something else in its place. But it takes time, it takes effort, and it takes patience. So that's it. Really quick and down and dirty in the classroom today. Be patient, have fun, and practice and take way more shots than you need to. But wait, there's more. Now that we've taken our photos, we have to finish the photos. And by finish, I mean edit. Let's go to Photoshop.
Classroom time, classroom time. Children, time to start learning. Classroom time, classroom time.
Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've opened up all of my photos. As I said, I took several. I think I've got about 40 here. And as you can see, I told you before, I had this mug back here, and it was drawing too much attention away from my cookies. Also, I didn't like the way this light was coming in. It's not warm enough. Chocolate chip cookies are kind of warm and inviting, and it's almost like a wintry kind of feel. And you want it to be warm and comfy. So now we're getting a little bit closer to the temperature of image that I want. But again, my mug back here is just too distracting. So here's a good example of using the white balance card that I was talking about. I've got the setup that I want, although I ended up not using this mug. And I've got my light coming in, and I've got my temperature set the kind of way I feel I want it, but it's looking a little bit dark down here. So this is without using that little bounce card. And this is the same shot using the bounce card. Identical shot, nothing else changed, except I put that little white reflector over here. And now all that light that's coming in from the window bounced off the reflector and filled in some of these shadows. You can see here though that the light was still a little bit too sharp, and that was before I was using that piece of parchment paper to use as a diffuser. So let's see what it looks like once I get the diffuser in there and the bounce and the proper mug. So this is our final shot. I've got the soft light coming in. I've got just enough of this glass that there's something filling in the back corners, but it's not overpowering my image. It's warm and inviting. I've used my reflector to fill in these shadows. This is the shot that I want, but it's not quite finished yet. So let's go ahead and make a few changes. The first thing I'm going to do is go to Image and Adjustments, and I'm going to change brightness and contrast. I'm going to bring the brightness down just a little bit, and I'm going to bring the contrast up just a little bit. With your shot, you'll be making other changes. You won't necessarily be following these exactly, but I'm just showing you how a few simple little tweaks in Photoshop can help. So I've set my brightness to about -15, and my contrast is up to about +25. Let's see if we can bring some more of these rich tones out by going to Image, Adjustments, and Selective Color. And Selective Color is pretty cool because all it does is actually just make changes to the tones that you tell it to. So right now, it's only going to make changes to the reds, and there are a lot of reds. So I want to bring my burgundy up a little bit, so I'm just going to bring my reds up a bit. Again, you want that reddish kind of burgundy in there, or it could have been like a royal blue or something that's got some nice rich color but is contrasting to the browns and oranges of your cookies. Do the same with yellows. And there aren't any greens. There's not much blue, maybe a little bit in the reflection on the glass. I'm not going to worry about that. Or cyans. Not much in the way of whites. We'll go to neutrals. Neutrals are very subtle. If you make too many big changes, it really changes your image, so be careful. And let's richen up those blacks a little bit. And when you're satisfied, click OK. The last thing I'm going to do, I always like to add a little bit of a vignette, that sort of hazy little ring that goes around your image. We'll lose it up here a little bit, but it'll put a little dark sort of ring around here, and that just helps us focus on our focal point in the middle. So to do that, we go up to Filter, and we go down to Lens Correction, and then over here you'll see a button that says Custom, and then about halfway down you'll see Vignette, and then I slide that slider all the way down to the very end. Again, that's completely and totally up to you. You might want a subtle vignette. You don't want to go up though. You don't want it to be brighter. You do want it to be darker. I'm going to bring it all the way down. You can decide. And then you can change your midpoint as well, how big that center you want to be. And once you're satisfied, click OK. And now we have our nice, rich, chocolatey chip cookie image, and that's your dark food photography setup, photography process, and editing process. And when you're done, cookies. I don't really like cookies that much.